encouragement. We have Ryan Penny as our call screener. He is out there grabbing your calls and getting them up on the board. Be sure to give him a great big old howdy hey when you call in. And let me give you the number to use. It's toll free for you right here in North America. It's 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Don't be shy. Give it a try. We promise that you're going to like it. We certainly do. So do pick up the phone and call us at 833-288-EWTN. We're also available for you out there at EWTN Radio's YouTube channel and Facebook page. Jeff Burson, who is our producer extraordinaire, is also our social media maven, and he'll go out there and grab your questions, comments, insights, inspirations, words of encouragement, and he'll get them up on the board for us, and we'll be able to take them for you today. Well, today is Wednesday. You know what that means? We have Sue Brinkman in the house. She is with us every Wednesday. We call it Wacky Wednesday because we talk about all of the wacky things that we see going on. And some of these things, they're wacky. They seem far-flung. They seem like we would be able to look at these things and, kind of like dismantle what they're all about instantly. But the fact of the matter is, many of these things have made major inroads into our culture of the day and have been about the business of changing our mindset, really moving us from a Judeo-Christian point of view to a very secular humanist point of view, or a New Age point of view, or even, an Eastern Oriental mysticism point of view, such as we find in Sufism or Buddhism or Hinduism. And it's always concerning when we find these things moving into the life of children. We're going to be talking about some of that today as we move forward in our program. And here we are, and in many places, school is starting up. There are, wonderful schools that are offering in-person teaching. It's a new phrase, isn't it? Adapted because of the coronavirus thing, where children are actually going into a classroom like we understand education to be. A lot of other children are doing schooling from online experiences. And I have both things going on. Really, I think it's just one thing going on in the life of my grandchildren right now. I think that they're all homeschooling, if you want to put it that way. Teacher instructed, teachers on the other side of the computer there. But, the fact of the matter is we have to be alert. We have to be aware as parents and as grandparents, and we have to be willing to open our mouths and to speak truth into a world that seems to be, very captivated by fables and by arcane thinking, and in some cases by very dangerous ideologies. I have been in production at EWTN for Women of Grace this week, and I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Samuel Gregg on his new book. And, it's a compelling read. It's a compelling read. And it reminds us of the fact that, ideologies have consequences when we begin to embrace them. And oftentimes they're being lived out at such a relatively, what do I want to say, such a relatively covert way that we're not aware of them until suddenly we find ourselves, face to face with entire systems of thinking, policies, intrusions into our children's educational lives, cultural kinds of trends. And we wonder, where did these all come from? Well, the fact of the matter is the seeds have been sown, and those seeds have been cultivated, and they've been watered. And suddenly now we see them blossoming, and we're looking at a whole field of ideas, a whole field and range of thought processes, a whole field and range of practices and techniques and methods, a whole system of thinking. And we wonder, my goodness, we didn't see this happening, but here we are, and now we're embroiled in it. And it can be very paralyzing. But as we often say here at Women of Grace, we have nothing to fear. Because, Jesus tells us it's useless, so don't fear. Trust in him, but do everything that we can to reverse the trend. And we're going to be talking about some of those things with Sue Brinkman today. And it's going to be important, especially if you have children that, are going back to school, have gone back to school. If you're grandparents of those children, aunts or uncles, concerned friends, citizens of the United States of America, as we've always known the United States of America to be. A passing concept in many ways. We've got to really work hard. And it's been on my heart and mind and taking up a good deal of my prayer time, to ask the Lord to help rouse us as a people, to rouse us as a citizenry, but not just a citizenry in the temporal dimension, but a citizenry in the kingdom of God, and to stand tall in the midst of the darkness of the day and proclaim the light of truth. Because really, a lot of the principles upon which this nation was founded, that our school systems used to proclaim, I want to say are under attack, but that's become, almost a trite expression, and I don't want to minimize the concern that we ought to have, that they are definitely being bludgeoned. I think that's a better way, attack. Okay, so what? Attack? No, they're being bludgeoned. And we see the bludgeoning being lived out in the current events of the day and time. This total disregard for the dignity of the human person, this total disregard for the rights of other people, trampled upon because of ideologies and because of a sense of intellectualism. And where intellectualism eventually leads? It, in itself, a type of ideology. It leads to, I'm right and you're wrong. You have to be tolerant of me, but I need not be tolerant of you. And if force and violence is the way to get this across to you, then force and violence it shall be. We have no license for that kind of a thing. And yet today we've made way for it, haven't we? So, we're in serious times, but we have some answers for you. We're going to be talking about those today with Sue Brinkman. So I want to invite you to give us a call, 833-288-3986. That's 833-288-EWTN. I might ask you this question, and the question is this: what do you find most paralyzing about what's taking place today? What is your greatest struggle in getting about the business of proclaiming the truth and standing tall in the midst of it? What seems to be bludgeoning you? How about that? What seems to be bludgeoning you? These are the things that we've got to look at, and we've got to look to God and ask for the grace that we need to rise up. But then we've got to cooperate with that grace and get about the business of doing it. 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Also available to you are the chat features there at EWTN Radio's YouTube channel and Facebook page. We invite you to use them. Get your question, comment, insight, inspiration, word of encouragement up there, and Jeff Burson will get them. Ryan Penny on the phone today. Sue Brinkman standing by, ready to come on the air. We're going to talk about some stuff. We certainly are. Call us with your questions. Anything that you see wacky, or maybe even more than that, anything that you see dangerous that is taking place in the culture of the day. We want to hear from you. We want to look at it through the eyes of faith. We want to muster up all of the grace God is offering us and move forward as lights shining in the darkness of our day and time. That's the call. That's the mission. We're coming right back. 833-288-EWTN. Stay with us.
Don't miss the Good Fight on Saturday. The fearless Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas, and the executive director of the St. Philip Institute, Dr. Stacy Trasankos, will be with us to discuss the importance of morally produced vaccines and their new catechesis for teens called The Way of Christ. To whom shall we go? That's the Good Fight on EWTN Radio.
Hi friends, Johnnette Williams here. Would you like some good news in your inbox? Sign up for our daily grace lines to receive a daily reflection that includes a quote from sacred scripture or your favorite saint, a beautiful image, and a question for pondering. In less than 5 minutes per day, it is sure to inspire you to live deeply your Catholic faith. Sign up today at womenofgrace.com/sign up or text Women of Grace in all caps to 22828.
The Reason for Our Hope with Father Larry Richards.
Once someone's died, you remember explicitly what that person said to you. Now, so we go back and we start off with King David. Now, King David is a good man to begin with because King David, the word David means beloved of God. God says of David, he is a man after my own heart. But you all know David, right? He was a murderer. And yet God said he was a man after his own heart because David kept getting up and trying, repenting. We have the beautiful Psalms. God have mercy on me, coming from David, So he knew what it was to be a man. And so here's King David, and he takes his son Solomon. The last words of wisdom he gives him. 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 2. He says, I am going the way of all mankind. So take courage and be a man.
Encouraging women in their gift of authentic femininity. Here's more Women of Grace with Johnnette Williams.
Welcome back, friends. You are listening to Women of Grace Live. I am Johnnette Williams. I'm delighted to be with you today. I hope you're delighted to be with us. Share your delight about it. Give us a call, 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. Pick up the phone. Ryan Penny's waiting for you. We're waiting for you, too. We certainly are. EWTN Radio's YouTube channel and Facebook page have chat features, and we invite you to use that chat feature there to get your question or comment up that way too. Jeff Burson will dash on out there and get that question and put it up on the board for us. We have Sue Brinkman in the house, and oh dear me, Sue, we talked about a lot of heavy things right there in that monologue. Yeah, but there's a lot that's brewing out there, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Isn't there?
Absolutely. This is a very troubling time. There's just turbulence everywhere you look. Culturally, in the church, in politics, everything. Everybody seems to be at war. Mm-hmm. Everybody's fighting with each other. Nobody's talking anymore. We're all just fighting and yelling.
Well, and that's the fact of it. And I think that the pressures that are coming obviously have a spiritual reality attached to them. But what we're really fighting for, I do believe, is we're fighting for the sake of Western civilization. And I don't think that we understand that quite, as a people. And Western civilization needs to be protected. And I shared earlier that I'm going to be interviewing Sam Gregg tomorrow, actually. I'm looking forward to it very, very much. And he's written a new book. It's called Reason, Faith, and the Struggle for Western Civilization. And it's a bit of a heady book, making my way through it. But it's very, very insightful. And he's talking about when you separate, when Western civilization was built on the fact of reason and faith. It was built on that fact, and there's no dichotomy between the two. And when you begin to separate them, for example, if it's all reason with no faith, or it's all faith with no reason, you end up with pathologies of thinking. And he explores some of those pathologies of thinking, and he shows how today these ideologies have really laid hold of Western civilization, and it can collapse under the weight of it. And I think that these ideologies, I think that a lot of the yelling and the screaming and all that's going on out there, even down to the protests that we're seeing taking place in many of our major cities, I think that all of that is ideologically based. And it's a pathology of either a lack of faith, no faith, God is dead, Nietzscheism, right? Although Nietzsche killed reason too. It's what I'm learning. I'm learning a lot in this book. But it's a pathology that comes from the denouncing of one or the other of those things. And it's interesting. We're in these very, very interesting times, and we're going to be talking about some of that. But we've got a caller out here, and I want to get to her. And her name is Sue too. She's in Livonia, Michigan, Sirius XM 130. Sue is a first-time caller. Our first-time caller bell for you, Sue. It's a great big ding-dong bell. I don't know where my little ones are. They're packed somewhere right at the moment. But nonetheless, welcome to Women of Grace. How are you doing?
Okay. Thank you.
So talk with us. You've got a big issue you're facing right now.
Yeah, my daughter, who I never had even thought of this topic, came to me in high school and said she thought she was gay, and I tried to understand this, and I don't. It's not in our family. I mean, she saw no one gay in our family. There were no instances where this came up. We're Catholic family for generations, and I don't understand how I'm supposed to have a daughter and a relationship with her and still have a family. I just don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, let me just ask you a couple of questions. When she came to you and she expressed this opinion to you, did she give you reasons why she feels this?
She she said she was having some dreams about girls, and I just said, it's very hormonal at your age to be going through that. Very many people dream about many things. You can't control what you're dreaming about. We talked about that, and then I think she just went out into the outside world and took her peers' advice on what was going on instead of her family's. And now, she's still young. I do pray that every day she, maybe in some developmental way, she'll understand what she's doing to herself and her family. But I don't understand how to live my life and have my daughter included in things when she's living in this horrendous way that I can't even wrap my head around.
So she's acting out then? That's what I hear you saying. This isn't just something that she's thinking about. She's moved on to the next step of actualizing what she's been thinking.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, obviously, you're doing what you can as a mother. You pray. The church's position on this, Sue, is clear that, if in fact there is same-sex attraction here, if there is that attraction, the attraction in itself is not sinful. What is sinful is acting out on it. And so what I would encourage your daughter toward is chastity. Just as if, she had not expressed this particular situation, this particular attraction, but she was attracted to young men, then what would we say? We would say, be chaste. So the call is the same here. Chastity is the virtue that needs to be practiced. The situation that she might be experiencing psychologically is something that is worth exploring. And there are good Catholic psychologists who you can talk to that will help to walk you through this as a mom and help to walk her through this as a young woman who is perplexed by this. And they're few and far between, in the psychological world right now, because you cannot diagnose this. At one point in time, this was diagnosable, but it's not anymore. But nonetheless, these good men and women of God will try to explain and try to work with a young person who is experiencing some type of complication in this way, or a gender dysphoria. And so, I would encourage you to email us, and we would be very happy to share some of those names with you. How does that sound to you?
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And the thing for you to do, and this is the call, you love your daughter. If you didn't love your daughter, you wouldn't be concerned about her right now. You love your daughter. And she needs to know that you love her, that you are in her corner, that this is not acceptable, that this is not the way that God has made her. When you said it's not in your family, this is not something that is hereditary. It's not genetically based. It isn't. And you are right. Oftentimes, there are these pulls, Pulls, that happen during adolescence. But what we do is we work to triumph over those pulls, and it doesn't indicate those pulls, those temptations, those thoughts, those attractions do not necessarily mean that someone has same-sex attraction. But today, because of the culture that we live in, the hype is that, and that comes from an insidious anti-life agenda. It truly does, which is part of the reason why this is so heavily promoted, and it comes from a certain intellectual perspective and the population control people that don't want more children, and so there is this push to raise up and give status to what, frankly, is a behavior system that is not healthy in any way, psychologically, physically, mentally, emotionally, which is why the incidence of domestic violence, the incidence of drug addiction, the incidence of alcoholism, the incidence of suicide is greater in that population of people than it is in other populations of people. We were not oriented in that direction. So, it's a battle today for the minds and the hearts of our children, and but we can help you in that way. So I want you to email me to womenofgrace@ewtn.com. Okay, womenofgrace@ewtn.com. And I'll get some information to you to help you know how to approach this with your daughter, and also individuals that can help her, and let's see how we can work this out. But be assured of our prayers for you and for her, and just keep loving her. Don't break that communication line, because that's the only thing that can really begin this process of restoration. Go ahead, Sue Brinkman.
Yeah, that's so true what you just said, Johnnette. And I just want to reiterate it to you, Sue, because I know people personally who are going through the exact same thing that you are right now. And for one thing, they have found a lot of help through the Courage organization.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that they have one. I know that they have. I think it's called Encourage, isn't it? Encourage is the one that
for
helps
the parents and loved
loved
Mm-hmm.
ones of people who have those attractions. But if you can, you kept saying how can we be together as a family with this going on, and you must be together as a family. As Johnnette said, you do love your daughter. You must continue to let her know that she's loved, because she's going to be going through a lot of conflicts, especially as she moves ahead in these relationships. She finds out it's not all the nice bliss that she's hearing about, from her peers, that there's problems with it. She may experience conflicts by being attracted to men and then not knowing, well, who am I? What am I? You need to always keep that communication up with her so that she can come back to you, and she knows that you love her and that she can turn to you for help. She's going to need help in the future, Sue. She's going to need help, and you want her to come back to you for that help. So your love is what's going to speak Christ to her, and what's going to speak safety and security. You can come home to me, honey. I love you. I'll help you work through this conflict, and maybe then you can help her to get out of this lifestyle for all the reasons Johnnette has just explained.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, though, you do have to tell her and be honest with her. I love you, but the behavior I cannot accept. And that's difficult separation for young people to get into their heads. It's just like a kid that is being rebellious and doing things they ought not to be doing. I love you, but I don't love this behavior. And Courage and Encourage can help you to work through that, as can some of these mental health counselors. So, we're going to be supporting you in prayer through this, Sue, as we're supporting a lot of people. And listen, many of us are finding this even in within our extended families. And as Sue says, this is not unusual today. It's heartbreaking, but unfortunately not unusual. So get that email off to us, Sue, so we can get that information out to you. womenofgrace@ewtn.com. Put in the subject line, Johnnette asked me to send this or something, so that I get it right away. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome, honey. God bless you now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Sue Brinkman, one of the problems that we have with regard to this, I think, is the fact that because every relationship has become sexualized in our culture today.
So true.
If you have a deep affection for a person of the same sex, okay, like you have you're drawn to someone because you like them a lot, it immediately takes on a sexual connotation as opposed to a deep friendship. We are supposed to have deep, loving friendships with people of the same sex. But that doesn't mean that it's a sexual attraction. But today, because it's so sexualized, you feel as though you have to take it there. And people interpret it as, then I am sexually attracted to the same sex, because that's what they're hearing.
Exactly, that's what they're hearing. What I was just going to say. They're being raised on this in their public schools, because it's been years now that they've been having these anti-bullying programs, which are actually just cover-ups for promotion of same-sex behavior. This is what those programs really are. And they're being introduced to these ideas. They might have deep, wonderful relationships, and if somebody hadn't introduced them to these ideas, it wouldn't even occur to them that it would be sexualized. But this is what they're being taught. in so many cases in these schools. And this is what our culture teaches. This is what's on the, I mean, how many commercials do you see that have same-sex couples on them? I mean, it's promoted. Everything's fine. Just go ahead and do it. All of the ramifications of those relationships are kept out of sight, out of mind. They don't want anyone to know that there's harm can be done to people and what kind of harm can be done to people who are involved in these relationships. So this is what's happening. They're being conditioned almost to think that way.
You're right.
They're really being conditioned, and that's a bad thing that's going on. It's something that I don't envy parents having to deal with this and having to try to be the voice of reason to their children, except otherwise just give these kids the facts, show them the facts and say, look, this is what you might be hearing in school, but here's some facts for you.
Yeah.
Here's the stuff they're not telling you.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I'm going to say something pretty radical here, but I'm going to say it because there is truth in this. The fact of the matter is, the schools are government schools, and there are ideologies afoot. And we started off the program this way. There are ideologies afoot today that are being disseminated through government schools. This should not be surprising because, you know, the whole John Dewey, you know, upon whose theories the schools are built, had very specific ways of looking at the world and philosophies that he wanted to impart, and this is how it's come about. And so you have organizations like the National Education Association, the Teachers Organization, the NEA, and they are driven by ideologies. They have a strong lobbying group, and these get implemented within our public school system, which has become indoctrination centers in many, many ways. And you know, when you say there's an attempt here to create a certain kind of citizen for the future, the school is the lab where this is happening. I'm going to go all the way back to outcome-based education, you know, and then the way in which that morphed off into some of the other educational systems that have been put in place more recently. Now we have this mindfulness thing, and I think that we've got a call there, Jeff, from somebody that had a question about it. I want you to pull that call up for us right now so that we can get into this topic. Oh, we're going to do it right after the break. How did we get to the bottom of the hour so quickly here, Sue? We're going to do that right on the other side of the break, friends. So, yeah, we're in serious times, and there's serious things going on, and we've got to be aware of it, and we cannot be afraid of it, and we cannot bury our heads. You know, and something is not, you know, people talk about conspiracy theorists and fanatics. It's not a theory if it's actually happening, you know. So we invite you to stay tuned. We're going to be right back with you after our break today. 833-288-EWTN is the way you can join us. That's 833-288-3986. EWTN Radio's YouTube channel, Facebook page available for you. Use the chat feature. We'll get your question. Coming right back. Stay tuned.
Get Amazon Fire TV. All you need is a high-speed internet connection, a TV, and the Amazon Fire TV player. Never miss any of your favorite EWTN television or radio programs again.
EWTN, communicating the faith.
Fallen away Catholic years and years ago, doing my own thing, and my mom and dad never gave up on me, and I know it was the Holy Rosary, and they kept after me. Philip, pray your Rosary, and eventually I did. I'm a member of the Knights of the Immaculata, Maximilian Kolbe's group. I'm with the Legion of Mary, and I haven't stopped leading the Rosary in nursing homes, thanks be to God.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
In these uncertain times, Catholics depend on EWTN's National Catholic Register. The Register is so much more than a newspaper. It's your faith, your life, your source of information and spiritual resources. The Register is uplifting, redemptive journalism, interviews with Catholic leaders and newsmakers, liturgical coverage, health, financial, and political topics, and analysis of the key issues you care most about. EWTN's National Catholic Register covers covers every aspect of the Catholic faith that impacts your world. To get 6 free issues, order online at ncregister.com/radio or call 800-421-3230 and mention code RADIO. That's ncregister.com/radio or call 800-421-3230 and mention code RADIO. The National Catholic Register. Read faithfully.
Tomorrow on More to Life, Making Adjustments.
Are you struggling to adjust to recent changes in your life? We'll help you find your feet.
That's tomorrow on More to Life. Now, back to Women of Grace.
Transforming the world one woman at a time. Let's return to Women of Grace with Johnnette Williams.
Welcome back, friends. You are listening to Women of Grace Live. I am Johnnette Williams. We're happy to be with you today, encouraging you to give us a call here, 833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. So, Sue, when we went to the break there, we were talking about the fact that, unfortunately, our public schools have become places where children are being conditioned to certain kinds of ideologies and certain kinds of thought processes that can be very far removed from the revealed truth of sacred scripture and the teachings of the church, very far removed from the Judeo-Christian ethos upon which Western civilization was built. And this should concern all of us. It should concern all of us. We're seeing it being played out all over the place today, in our streets for one place. But the fact of the matter is, you used a word called conditioning, and a lot of the techniques that are being used today are conditioning children. And I don't want to say that all of the majority of teachers are not aware of this. They really are just not aware of this. These are things that come in and they think, oh, wow, there's some use to this. And it's really sold as something that's very useful and helpful for children, and they see the upside, but they really don't see what's at the heart of this. They don't really see what it's based on. They don't necessarily see how it can be part of a conditioning process. And one of those techniques is mindfulness. And I want to talk about that right now. And Jeff, we have a caller that called in about it, not necessarily in relation to school, but let's go to that call and then we'll launch right into this topic. Again, the 833-288-EWTN is the number for you to use. That's 833-288-3986. Go ahead with the call there, Jeff.
John Erie asking the question, is mindfulness allowed by a Catholic person? Says meditation and mindfulness of those things? Please answer my question. Thank you.
Well, John, thank you very much for your question, and we're going to turn it over to Sue, and she's going to answer your question.
Okay, yeah. Mindfulness is the practice of mindfulness, which is very popular today, is not something that a Christian should be practicing. And the reason why is because it's based on Buddhist meditation techniques, and they are about blanking your mind, and they are about being hyper focused on the present moment, and everything else has to go out of your mind. It's just, what's there, what is happening to you. That's all you focus on. In Christian prayer, it's all about a dialogue with God. And we use all of our senses in Christian prayer in order to communicate with our God and in order for us to hear him communicate back to us. When you're sitting there blanking your mind and pushing thoughts away, what you're doing is really controlling your prayer. And as a Carmelite, I will tell you, our charism is prayer. That is the one thing you don't want to do, is control your prayer, is sit there and say, well, I'm going to pray like this, and this is what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to do that. And then no, you come to prayer for God because of what God wants to do with you during that time of prayer. And if you think about it, that's a whole different attitude. It's a big attitude change. And when you look at it that way, you'll say to yourself, well, why I couldn't do mindfulness then? Because mindfulness is all about that, trying to control your mind. Rather than letting God speak to you in prayer. So mindfulness is not an acceptable practice, at least not the kind of mindfulness that's being taught out there, which is it's based on the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which is all based in Buddhism. And the meditation, the breathing space meditation, the body scan meditation, these are all typical Buddhist meditation practices that really don't have any place in Christian prayer.
Yeah. And I do want to say, too, that these practices are not isolated to public schools. They're happening in a lot of private schools that are non-sectarian private schools, but they're happening in sectarian schools as well. Even some of our Catholic schools have adopted these practices. So it's a very important thing to realize that the basis of mindfulness, as Sue is pointing out, is religion. It's Buddhism. It's a very different worldview, and this concept of the present moment is not seen in the same way as the grace of the present moment. But because the language is similar, people will confuse them, and one of the aspects of this mindfulness too, Sue, is to make no judgments, no evaluations about anything that rises up within you, right?
Yeah.
And we know that is not a Christian approach to prayer. It's not a Christian approach to life. Jesus tells us, judge a tree by its fruits, right? So we're called to evaluate. The only thing we can't judge is the eternal destiny of somebody's soul. That's the only thing. But we're called to evaluate. And some of our emotions need evaluation. They need to be seen under the light of truth, under the light of the gospel, under the light of church teaching, to determine if it's of God and if it's not of God. So how do you know what's coming up in you if you cannot use your critical thinking skills? And that's a common part of all Eastern Oriental meditation, whether it's yoga, whether it's transcendental meditation, whether it's mindfulness, no matter what aspect of it is. It's this idea of not allowing your emotions to be evaluated. No, critical thinking skills, shutting down the left hemisphere of the brain, so that you are not rationally looking at anything. And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Annihilation of reason. We have to reason. That's one of the ways in which we image God.
That's right. That's right. And imagine teaching this to children now. We're talking about elementary school age children who are being taught to just let their emotions and thoughts float by. This is a basic principle in Buddhist meditation. They believe that good and bad exist only in the mind. Okay, so instead of encouraging children to address what confusion or badness or feeling they might have when they have a bad thought and a bad thought enters their mind, mindfulness encourages them to just ignore it. So they're being taught to view all thoughts as being neutral. So that eliminates the idea that thoughts and actions can be objectively right or wrong, right? And over time, what happens with bad thoughts? They very often lead to bad actions, okay? So you don't want to be teaching kids this, and they are teaching it to them, and they're teaching it to them on steroids. In some cases, 80 minutes a day is being spent in mindfulness. Some practices, typically it's like a 15-minute practice. They'll have audio recordings to encourage children to participate in distinctly Buddhist practices, such as emptying their minds, letting their thoughts float away on a cloud, things like that. These are being introduced into our schools under these programs, such as Mind Up, Inner Explorer, Calm Classroom, Mindful Schools. And a bunch of parents got together. This was last year now. They got together. They were concerned about this. They didn't want their kids being taught this stuff. And they contacted the ACLJ, which is the American Center of Law and Justice. That's Jay Sekulow's organization. And they began to really look into this. And what the schools were telling them, and they were arguing, this is secular. We've secularized it. And they looked into this. They said, no way is this secularizing. When you use one of those programs on some other form of mindfulness curriculum, that program is inherently religious. From the initial creation to the current application, Buddhist thoughts and beliefs permeate those programs. And by putting them into a school, what is happening here? A potential violation of the Establishment Clause. You're not supposed to be pushing religion on people. And not just because you're telling yourself and wanting to be in la-la land and say, oh, no, we secularize it, everything's fine. You can't secularize the basic principles of that. This is what they're teaching the children to do, and that is Buddhism. Okay? You can't get around that. But the part that really upset me about it is that if the kids refused and they didn't want to participate in it, they were forced to sit outside the classroom in the hallway, almost like they were being punished for it. So, what is this doing to our children? And the other aspect of it, and I spoke to some of the attorneys at the ACLJ about this when it was happening, and they said that people like Goldie Hawn, she's the one who has the Mind Up School program, she's the perfect example of how they try to make this secularized, and they fool a lot of teachers. Johnnette, you were right when you said a lot of teachers, and even the principals and the school board don't understand some of this stuff. What Goldie Hawn does is she replaces words such as Buddhism and meditation. She says neuroscience and core practice. And she admits that she aims to bring Buddhist contemplative practice in the schools, but that she's changing the language in order to get around those who would balk at its religion foundation. She comes right out and says it. And the lawyers that I was talking to about this said that once they started sending letters to schools and warning them about this, and some schools thankfully dropped the programs right away. They didn't want any part of that, right? She said they noticed that they would go on the websites and these programs began to scrub their websites and hide the Buddhism even more. So you got to be really careful about this. This is stealth Buddhism that's coming into the kids' schools. And as you were saying, a lot of the principals, the administrators of the schools are not aware of the stuff that's going on until it's being pointed out to them, unfortunately, by lawyers sending letters, which means, that's always a heart-stopping moment. And that's what's going on out there. And thankfully, the ACLJ is taking action. People can write to them. There was a huge petition. Well over 100,000 parents signed it to say they want this stopped in schools. They don't want it being taught to their children. And so you can write to them and report what's going on in your school. And you can do that anonymously if you don't want your name used. And they will look into it, perhaps send them a letter. But this has to be stopped. And the only way to stop it is going to be parents. They're understanding what's going on. You learn what it's all about, and then you take some steps. And you do it reasonably, prayerfully. Go ahead and voice your complaint. And then if they don't do anything to satisfy it, move on, perhaps to the ACLJ, and report it to them. That's my suggestion to try to get this to stop, because it's insane what they're doing with our children's minds.
Well, the interesting thing is that there have been studies, scientific studies, and this is one of the other problems that we have. We reduce everything to, if it's not scientifically provable, then, it doesn't exist or whatever the case is. But nonetheless, there have been scientific studies that have been done that show that the effect of praying the rosary is greater than the effect that is accomplished by any of these meditation techniques. So, I can just imagine if a parent went into the classroom and said, oh my goodness, I noticed that you're teaching this mindfulness, and I see that it's definitely a part of the Buddhist religion. Here, let me just show you the facts on that, and those facts are achievable. We've got those facts on our website, Sue, thanks to you. And so, I'm excited about the fact that you're allowing Buddhist religion allowing religion into the classroom right now. Here's a rosary. I'd like to come in every day and teach the children how to pray this rosary.
Because
that's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen. And why is that? Because Judaism, Christianity, the Judeo-Christian ethos is what is being bludgeoned today. That is what is being curtailed, and it's a scary reality, but it's a very true reality. Kathy's with us out there on YouTube, and she says, indoctrination is everywhere. Parents, don't assume your children know how to handle it. Encourage conversation about these things. And this is true. We want to know what's going on in our children's lives, and we need to ask them. And maybe one of the good things that's coming out of this fact that so many children are learning at home now, whether it's the parents teaching them or whether it is a teacher teaching them, online or some hybrid of the two, maybe one of the good things is parents are more aware of what's going on in their children's classrooms. And we need to be aware, and then we need to talk to our children about it and take action where we need to take action, right, Sue?
Oh, absolutely. You've got to do that. And I'll tell you what, another aspect of this is Buddhists are not too happy about this either, by the way. And there are some that are raising some concerns about the way they're calling this wrong mindfulness, this stealth Buddhism that's being introduced to children. And they're trying to detach it from the Buddhism in which it's rooted. And they're saying that's going to cause wrong mindfulness practices because they're being taught only as meditation techniques and without an understanding, an adequate understanding of the rest of the issue. So that's going to make it actually be wrong mindfulness, and that this secular version could actually harm them in the long run. And the Dalai Lama's translator, and I cannot pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to try it, but he contests the idea that this can ever be done, that you can ever secularize mindfulness, stating that mindfulness, he says, is the essence of Buddhism. Therefore, it's a Buddhist practice that cannot be separated from its religion. So they're not happy about this either. The way we take this stuff, and it's called cultural appropriation, and we take it and we try to make it fit our point of view and fit the fact that there's a huge booming industry out here for mindfulness right now, even though, as you were saying, Johnnette, the science is not behind it at all.
No.
And many responsible scientists have come out, and especially those from Brown University, they put out a statement that said, hey, stop this runaway train. We don't have the evidence that mindfulness does any good. So why do we have it in schools? Why are we giving this to children? Why are we using this to treat people who have serious mental issues? Because that's what they're using it for, serious stress and anxiety issues. If we can't really prove yet that it's any good. I mean, they studied 19,000 of these studies on mindfulness and mantra-based meditation, and they found only 47 that were methodologically sound. And of those that were found to be sound, none of them proved that mindfulness was any better than any other intervention. So it's kind of like a lose-lose situation here, but we're on this runaway train. It's become a fad. It's on the cover of all these magazines. Everybody's talking about it. It's the mindful thing to do. Let's be mindful. And if they knew what the Catholic version of mindfulness was, which is of course the practice of the presence of God in the sacrament of the present moment, if they knew what that was, now that's the kind of mindfulness that a Catholic wants to get involved in. Focusing on the present moment. Not just for the moment, but for what God is saying to you in that moment. What is he telling you about this moment? Even now, people listening to this radio show right now, what is he saying to you in this moment that you're listening to this, that you're hearing this? What is God trying to say to you for that? What is the gift that God has for you in this moment? That's what Catholic mindfulness is all about. It's not just staring into, a 0.5 feet in front of you and just whatever thoughts come, let them come and go. No, you want to hear, what is God saying to me in this moment? I want to get the full glory of God. I want to see it in this moment, all the richness of this moment that he has to offer me. So mindfulness is really, it's a cheap version of what we have, I guess you could say. It's a cheap imitation of what Catholics really do have if they want to live mindfully. Just stay in the present moment in the presence of God, and that'll be all the mindfulness you need.
Well, and Sue, and that's beautiful, and it's beautifully stated. And of course, that is the Christian way of life. And the idea of the grace of the present moment is finding God in all things. And I'm going back to some words that our Lord gave us. And he said, ask, seek, ask, knock, and seek. He says, ask and it will be given unto you. Knock and it will be opened unto you. Seek and you will find. And that's what we're supposed to be doing in every moment. We're not looking to quell, our reasoning capacity. We are at attention, seeking God in and through all things, and using the gift of faith and the gift of our reason to discern what it is that he's saying to us, right? That's the Christian approach to life. That is living intentionally. It's living intentionally. So we intentionally live. It's not an idea of shutting down the capacities that he's giving to us. And there's a certain fear, because what happens is this becomes a habit. It becomes a habitual way of being. And we don't realize how quickly these neural pathways, are forged in the brain. And one of my concerns is that if you begin to enter into a continued development of turning off the emotions, then you begin to become an unemotionally responding person. In other words, the idea is that you become placid. One of the things is, you just get more peaceful. Yeah, you get more peaceful because that whole practice is generating hormones that are coming through the pituitary and hypothalamus glands in the brain, and what's ending up happening is you're drugging yourself. So you are non-responsive. So not only are you peaceful, you're peaceful because you're drugged on your own biochemistry, but you're also not fully alive. You are deadening yourself. And that's very fine if the overall concept is, that you're to be controlled, and the other aspect of that is any thought process can be put into your mind at that point. You're almost in a hypnotic state. And so you leave yourself very vulnerable to mental suggestion. These are just some of the concerns that go on with this thing. And it's not healthy. It's not good. We have Aricia with us in Temple, Georgia today. She is a first-time caller. And here you go. There you go. That's a welcome to the show, Aricia. How are you?
Thank you. How are you?
Okay. So what's going on in your world?
I'm calling to this is my first time calling, as you said. I'm having some issues with my siblings.
Okay.
And we're 3 girls. Our parents were married for 30 years. They're still living. And recently I reached out to both of them and to try to figure out why we don't have a relationship. And as the youngest, or the baby, if you will, I've called them several times. And every time I've asked them, I got the dismissive, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. We love you. We have a relationship, blah, 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 blah. So one day I was listening to the radio, and they defined, and I knew it was from God, define why God gave you friends as far as your siblings. Your siblings are the friends that God gave you. And you're all supposed to be the best of friends and make decisions about your parents and their well-being as they get older. Well, I've been trying to do this for years. I just want some insight on what I could do differently, or what prayers or novenas or rosaries I need to say to get this emotion, so to speak. Because I'm longing at 49 years old, and I'm the baby. I'm longing to have that relationship with my sisters, but they are not longing to have that relationship with me.
Well, Aricia, I just want to say this, and we're going to both respond here, and we just have a couple of minutes left in our show today. It's beautiful, this desire that you have, and that desire that you have for this camaraderie with your sisters, the building up of a relationship with them, I think is really coming from the heart of God, and I commend you on it. The difficulty is that we cannot make other people do what we think would be the best thing. They have free will. So they can choose or not choose to engage in relationship with you. But on a practical level, maybe one thing that you could do is invite them to your home. Say, I'm going to cook dinner. I'd like to plan an event. Come to the house and let's sit and let's talk. That might be a way that you could begin to encourage some kind of interaction. What do you think, Sue?
I think that's a good idea. And I wonder, is there any one particular sibling, sister of yours, that you think is more amenable to this than others? And maybe you could start with her and see if she can, you can try to get into a deeper relationship just with that one, rather than trying to mend it with all of them all at one time, something like that. But is there any one particular person there, Aricia, that you could perhaps start with?
And that's what we would ask you to think about, Aricia, because we're right to the end of the program. As far as the novena goes, it is a Rosary Novena called Our Lady Undoer of Knots, Knots. I would suggest that as prayer. But think about Sue's question. Think about my suggestion. Put it all together, and let's see what God does. And we'll be praying with you. Well, God bless you. I'm sorry we can't get to you, Marie. We look forward to being back with you again tomorrow, everybody. Sue Brinkman, thank you so very much. It's been a very, very busy show today. And until we're together again, may the abundant life of Jesus Christ be yours, and may God richly bless you. Bye-bye now.